Okay, now. All right. Welcome to Deeply Disturbing Things.
The podcast.
I'm Macy,
And I'm Naomi.
and we are two anxious counselors who like to talk about deeply disturbing things.
And this is our last episode. So let's crack in for the last time. Cheers.
Cheers. How many episodes? I was trying to figure out what number we're on.
Around 250.
250.
I would have to look it up, but it's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
So it's been 6 years. So
Mm-hmm.
we hung in there for 6 years.
That's a ridiculous amount of time for like anything, really.
So if you listen to us from the beginning, we used to each do a topic each time.
Right.
And then we started each just doing a topic and alternating.
That wasn't even that long ago that we switched that.
Since it's our last episode, we're bringing it back to the OG and we're
Bringing
each
it
going to
back.
do a topic.
Bringing it
Yes,
back.
we're at 242.
Whoa, 242. So
So who goes first? That's the
I-
big dilemma.
I think
Do you want to?
I think
Or me?
I should go second because like as far as like amount, mine isn't as girthy, but it applies to tying a lot of things
I need
together.
to stop doing that. That's really loud.
The spring.
Yeah.
Boing. Yeah, so I think I should go second. I think it'll tie in better.
And if you're watching this on video, if you're a Patreon, you'll notice the wall has been painted. No more dark mustard.
I feel like I'm in the ocean, but like that nice, like crystal clear water ocean.
Well, this is a therapy office. I was going for very peaceful.
Tranquil is a good word.
And I wanted my plants to pop, and I think they pop now. And before they kind of blended in, everything
That's
was
true.
too earthy.
Too many earth tones.
But when I painted the walls in 2006, that dark mustard, it actually was on trend, that color.
I like a good mustard color, I won't lie. I mean, and we're Taurus or signs, so that makes sense
Yeah,
too.
but 19 years later, I feel like it's time for a refresh.
Yes, because now you can have earth tones within the blue. It's nice.
Yes. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
So I really thought long and hard about what I wanted to do for my last topic. I had so many choices. It was really difficult to choose. I was like, do I go funny? Do I do a murder? What do I do? And so I decided to do this case that I'd been just following, that came out this past summer, because it's not only disturbing to fit our brand, but it's also, there's an uplifting element to it. So I felt like kind of ending
Like
with some
hope.
energy, some positivity as well.
Very good.
But it's definitely disturbing. So let's dive in.
All right.
This is the case of Gisele Pelicot. Did you hear about that?
No, I've never heard it.
Okay, it's very big in the news just recently. So this is a case in France. Over the course of 10 years, so a decade, Gisele Pelicot's husband, Dominique, drugged her so that strange men could rape her. 50 men were charged
Jeez.
with raping Gisele over the 10 years while she was completely unconscious. And the husband was also charged, by the way, because he also raped her while she was unconscious.
Right.
So she was raped over 200 times by 70 men who were all found by Dominique Pelicot online.
That is outrageous.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why only 50 were charged. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't have enough evidence on the others, but they know that there were 70 men. So I don't know what that was. I didn't deep dive into that aspect. So the French police report contains thousands of the messages, that the electronic messages that were sent between Dominique and these men, and they've been part of the key elements in this. So he would start out on this website called Coco, and that's where he would make initial contact with people, and it was really easy. There's like categories of chat rooms about violence.
When was this?
This is just last summer.
Just so okay.
I mean, I think the conviction just came last month in December. So this is a very recent case. So it started on the website, and then as it progressed, then he would take it to Skype. So there could be a video interaction.
Oh, okay. Like
And
a
then
consultation.
yeah, it's like a consult.
Okay.
like a meet and greet. And then when it came down to when they'd agreed that they were moving forward and they're like doing the last minute planning, then it was text.
Okay.
And all this evidence of all these messages are in the police report and were brought to the
Right.
case in
Because
court.
Guy probably just had record of everything.
Yes, and this website as well,
Mhm.
and of course the phone. Nothing can be deleted.
Right.
Don't think that if you delete it, it's deleted. It's still there.
It exists somehow.
So Dominique has been convicted of aggravated rape and sexual assault, and this case really forced France to address systemic male violence against women because there has been a culture that, well, it's his wife. Can't he do what he wants to her?
No?
But that, was the
What does
culture.
anything mean?
Anything. Yeah. And also that the men thought it wasn't rape because the husband was giving them permission, basically.
Like he consented, and
Yes,
so
on her behalf.
and her body belonged to him because they were married. Got it.
Yeah, that she doesn't get a say. So this really has been a huge reckoning
Mhm.
in France, which is part of that inspiration that Giselle has created
Which
for other women.
I would have honestly thought that I would have known that was the case in France, for like the systemic barriers there.
Well, honestly, in America, I mean,
Same,
I,
yeah.
I think we're not too far. I mean, some states may even have
Mhm.
laws where, the man can,
Property rights.
yeah, women are considered property. So Dominique chatted regularly um, on this forum on Coco, that website, and the forum was called Without Her Knowledge. Is that not creepy AF?
I mean, it's to the point, I guess.
To the point? Yeah,
I
but
mean,
just so and so accessible, like easily accessible. Like anybody
right.
could just get right on there. It's not hard. This is not the dark web, by the way. This is just the web.
Right. Well, and that goes to like nobody like polices the internet. There's maybe watch guards or all those things, but that just
The moderator ain't moderating.
who's paying for that?
So this website had several chat rooms that glorified sexual violence. This was just one. So people went there with a purpose and they got their needs met. So Dominique enlisted the men who came to their home
Oh, so they need like the address
to
and
rape his wife in her own bed. How incredibly violating
and so
without her knowledge.
with the whole time she never like knew.
No, she was knocked out cold with these drugs that he gave her. I mean, that is so,
Did she know like the next
it's so
day?
intimate and violating.
Right. And humiliating. Like just the
In your own
coming into
bed.
your
Like
own
that, you would think
house.
that's your safe space. Like that's my own bedroom, my own bed.
That your
It's my
husband has
space.
your best interest in mind, even.
Yeah, she said that she thought she was so lucky. He was, he would dote on her, bring her favorite ice cream. He was
Well,
so
probably
great.
because she felt like shit the next day.
Yes. So being raped in her own bed for 10 years by 70 men for 200 times at least, that is awful, awful.
Insanity.
Yes. And all the men lived right around their house within 31 miles.
That is terrifying. Because then, I mean, why is that person looking at me weird? You would just,
Yeah.
oh,
I was imagining
heebie-jeebies.
like being at the grocery store and somebody's looking at you like, "Oh, I just raped you last night."
For like,
And you wouldn't have any idea, but that person would, and that's
yeah. And
disgusting.
you wouldn't be able to like keep yourself safe when you don't know who the enemy is.
The enemy is in your own house.
Yeah.
You've let the enemy in. So, Dominique would have these Skype calls that like once they passed stage one on the website, then they were like prep video calls. And so he would be talking on video and then flip the camera around and show them his wife's unconscious in the bed
Mm.
to kind of like let them know this is the situation.
Like it's real.
Yeah, he also shared photos and videos of Giselle that she was unaware that were being taken or filmed. and several of them showed her being raped. So he filmed this stuff and took photos.
And sent it.
Yes. In some of the messages, several of the men were inspired by Dominique and said they admired him and said they wanted to do the same thing with their partners. So
The word
he's being a bad influence.
inspired there is terrifying. Yeah. It goes back to like what is the nature of man, so to speak. Like why is that just something that is inspired within somebody? It
Yeah,
shouldn't be.
he showed them that it could be possible. And so another defendant on the trial, he actually was convicted of drugging and raping his own wife. So he did and
Duplicate.
complicate, yeah,
Yeah.
copycat.
The contagion effect.
Yes, so this is very disturbing. I'm going to read like one exchange on the Skype because it's all part of the public record now. So this is Dominique on the Skype. You have to be clean without aftershave, no long dirty nails. So
Gross. I mean, trying to prevent
evidence,
infection and evidence. Yeah.
evidence,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and smells and like suspecting this,
Mm-hmm.
but really gross.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm wondering if that was because like early on there was an incident when maybe Giselle was scratched, and maybe the next day she was like, well, "How did I get the scratch?" or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, or
Or smell
a
like
smell.
some what's that? Do you get a cologne?
Yeah, yeah. Like
Mm.
what is it that smell in the bed? I mean, it's so freaking disgusting.
Right. Well, when you and like I feel like we know our bodies well enough to the point where like something would feel wrong, but you don't know what. So you might be like searching to try to
Yeah, you're
figure it out.
questioning yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like the worst case of gaslighting I've ever heard
Ever.
of.
It's horrible.
So, and then he went on, cut the sound. If you're not alone, I'll show you. She's free right now. And then he flipped the camera around. Um, and then the person who's talking with said, has the sleeping pill started working? And then the person said, she's a real, and then they didn't say the word, but said it was a sexist slur. She's a real blank without knowing it. So we can just fill in the blank. And so then, so that they were agreed on, they were going to have a plan and they moved forward. And so now it's on text. Like when it's the final arrangements, then
Okay.
he would switch to text. So Dominique says, I don't know whether I will try to have her F word this evening. Will you come if I do? And the person says, to F word her? In theory, yes. At that hour, I shouldn't be asleep, but it can't be too late. And then Dominique says, I'm about to dose her with her sleeping pill. Plan to come tonight around 3 a.m. And then the man says, one after taking the meds, she's completely asleep. I don't understand why we have to wait 4 hours. And Dominic says, the longer we wait, the deeper she sinks into sleep.
So he wants to make sure she's out.
And I imagine that he's really done a lot of experimenting with this,
Hmm.
where he doses her and probably is like shaking her vigorously or doing noises to see if she'll wake up. I mean, that is a heavy ass sedation.
Yeah, I was thinking like a pill is probably not all that did it.
It's
So
heavy, heavy
yeah.
sedation.
Gosh.
Heavy, yes. So Giselle Pelicot has testified she was completely unaware of her husband's actions because she was actually questioned on that, which is
Hmm.
awful in itself.
Right.
Because some of the men were saying, oh, she was faking, she was a part of it, she's complicit. It was like their kink or whatever.
Right.
So over time, as you alluded to, being sedated that heavily, so frequently, and the sexual abuse began to take a physical toll. So she went to see the doctor about memory loss and pelvic pain, and her husband accompanied her on the doctor visits. So what is your guess on why that was?
Well, to try to control the narrative, I'm sure. And
To hear probably if the
you're
doctor
right.
suspected anything
Right.
or if she suspected anything.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like if I don't know if there's abuse or neglect in the house and like a parent or whoever is involved comes along to try to listen in or, what did you tell the counselor?
Mm-hmm. It's disgusting.
They want their side.
Yep. Yep. So she was suffering. I mean, you can imagine being sedated that heavily, being raped 200 times.
And her like not knowing does not mean it didn't happen. Like it happened. So like it's so
Yeah.
her perspective, um, because I could see that him being like, well, it didn't have a negative effect.
I mean, I would be questioning, I would be like, do I have dementia? Like, what is going on? Why am I having memory loss?
Right.
Why do I have this pain? What is going on? Do I have cancer? I mean, that's what I would be
Well, and
thinking.
and is the memory loss linked with the meds so or whatever he was giving her, or was it? I mean, did
Yeah, it was
she
from being
experience?
sedated so heavily
Okay,
so frequently.
who knows like what else they did to her? I mean, because like how forceful and all of that, because it could be very, like you said, traumatic for the body, and she
Hmm.
could hit her head. They could, gosh, just hit the mic.
Yes. So this might have gone on until the end of time.
Yeah, what
Do you
made it
want to know
stop?
how he was finally caught?
How?
It was because Dominic Pelicot was arrested in a nearby supermarket for filming up the skirts of female customers. So he was upskirting.
Wow.
And when he was doing the investigation, they got a hold of like his computers and everything to see
Mhm.
what photos he had.
Yeah.
And that's when they discovered all the photos and videos of Gisele being raped
Wow.
and all the chats and all the Skypes and everything. So he might have never been caught
Hmm.
had he not been upskirting.
That is how I mean, I can think of one fairly recently in my mind of how people get caught is having something else get them in trouble, and then police raid their personal computers and things, and they find the reality of how bad things really are.
Yep. So police confiscated his hard drive, laptop, and phone, and that's where they found hundreds of images and videos of his wife being raped. And this opened one of the most horrifying sex offense cases in modern French history. And some of the photos were of his own daughter.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think it. So he had
He had a
one
son and
daughter, son
and
daughter.
adult children,
Mm.
um, two sons and a daughter.
Mm.
And he denied doing anything to her, but she doesn't believe it.
I mean, I wouldn't either at that point. Like,
Yeah, and they've all disowned him.
trust no one.
They've completely disowned him as their father, and she believes that he did something to her as well, drugged and raped her as well.
So twisted.
So, like I mentioned, most of the other men said they didn't realize they were raping her. They put the
You
blame on
kind
the
of
husband.
made an agreement, so you don't really get to backpedal out of that.
Yes, they said the husband was manipulating them.
I mean, it's like that one show, the what's it called, where they like trick the uh people who are like talking to young kids on the internet. They fake as young kids, and then they
Oh, like trapping them or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
like
yeah.
setting up a scenario.
What is that show called?
I've never seen that show.
Really, where the guy comes out and he's like, "Oh, are you pulling out condoms?" And then the guy panics and tries to like run out the door, but there's police out there waiting for him, and they tackle
I
him.
don't think I've seen that show, but it
Oh, okay.
sounds entertaining.
Yeah, yeah, they set him up basically. Yeah.
So a month ago, December 19th, like exactly a month ago, all 51 men who Pellico himself, Dominic is one of them, were sentenced for their crimes. The maximum sentence is 20 years for aggravated rape. So that's what Dominic himself got. Most of the other rapists got shorter sentences than the prosecutors sought, including a few who walked free with
Well,
suspended
that's
sentences.
probably not the first time they did that either. I mean, maybe for some, but that's the kind of upsetting thing is this isn't oh, I randomly decided to do this kind of thought. These are certain people who are looking for certain things.
Yeah, I mean, what was the name of that chat room? It's
She
like,
doesn't know.
yeah, exactly.
Uh, what she doesn't know might send her to the doctor should have been the actual website.
Yeah, and I don't even, I mean, my mind just spirals with this. So let's hear Giselle's own voice, because this is the part where I felt strengthened and
Okay.
uplifted and kind of like, fuck yeah, Giselle, you go, girl. So she says, for me, this is the trial of cowardice. There is no other way to describe it. And she added that there was no excuse for abusing her when she was unconscious.
Nope.
So, video recorded by her husband and shown in the court repeatedly featured her motionless, sometimes snoring, while the accused, including her husband, raped her. And she says, when you walk into a bedroom and see a motionless body, at what point do you decide not to react? Why did you not leave immediately to report it to the police? They must take responsibility for their actions. They raped. Rape is rape, which is revolutionary
Mhm.
in France and I would say even in the US.
Right.
I mean, we had all the Harvey Weinstein
Mhm.
and the
Well, in the current stuff with what's his real name, Sean,
Sean
still
Combs.
ongoing. Yeah.
Yep. So this is what I thought was the coolest of about Giselle. And if I mean, I'll probably will never meet her, but if I ever did, I would just say that this really resonated with me. She was given the choice um, to be anonymous
Hmm.
and not face her accusers in court and not have the process open to the media and the public.
Hmm.
And she chose to waive her anonymity. So her face and name would be made
Hmm.
public. She chose to face the men in court and she chose to open it up to the media and the public.
Yeah, I love that because it's so one again, like when I think I use the word humiliating, because I think that's the I mean it is. And to make it public, it does set a precedence of you don't get to hide and do this to people.
Exactly. And she said she hoped it would help other women speak up and show that victims have nothing to be ashamed of because I think there is still a lot of stigma about
Hmm.
being raped and the wrong person feels the shame.
Yeah, even just the like, how did you go that long without knowing? Like that is was the initial thought
All
because it's
right.
so
Or
long.
why were you in that situation? Like,
Right.
there's still victim
How
blaming.
couldn't you have known that
Yep.
he was a bad person?
So she says, I opened the doors of this trial so society could see what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted all women victims of rape, not just when they have been drugged. Rape exists at all levels. I want those women to say, Mrs. Pelicot did it. We can do it too. When you're raped, there is shame, and it's not for us to have shame, it's for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's true that I hear lots of women and men who say you're very brave. I say it's not bravery, it's will and determination to change society.
Mm-hmm.
So I just love that she's really trying to shut down the stigma that, like, why do people that are raped feel that stigma? That's society. And
Mm-hmm.
she is turning it on its head. And I just love her. And
I've heard that before too, the statement of I've heard it used in mental health aspects too. Like, don't call me like brave or
right.
like I don't want to have to be strong. Like I can't
Yeah.
feel weak right now because that's what position I was put into was being made to feel
Yeah.
weak and it's their fault.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, we wouldn't have to be so damn resilient if the world wasn't so fucking shitty.
Resilience is one of those catchwords that
Yeah.
has, I think, had good intentions, but kind of got overused in a lot of ways of be resilient.
And it puts all the pressure on the
The
individual, and there's
person.
no community, there's no systemic focus. So, yeah.
I heard that too with because there was like a almost anti like don't use the word victim. I'm not a victim. But then on the swing side of that is some I mean, you were victimized
Hmm.
and that means there's a perpetrator.
Yes.
So you don't have to be strong. You don't because it's hard.
Oh,
And but if you speak up, then maybe you would get help. So where did it so they got prosecuted? Her husband is
he
in
got 20
prison,
years. He
20
got the
years. Okay.
maximum.
Okay.
Um, a lot of the men got shorter sentence, and then some just walked free.
That part bothers me, but I don't like you said, you don't
I
really.
think it's an evidence thing. Like maybe he didn't take videos of them, or there wasn't enough text, or it was circumstantial, or and I'm sure he was very careful that there was no DNA. I mean, he had the fingernail thing. They probably used
When
condoms.
she went to the doctor, was there an outcome from that? Like, did the doctor say anything
No,
or
there was nothing that pointed to this.
well, and probably 'cause she didn't know what questions to ask because
Yeah,
she didn't
she's
know what
just
was
like,
happening.
I am having pelvic pain, which, um, you know, were the doctors male? Probably. I don't know. I mean, they don't know the right questions to ask.
Was he like prominent in society or like did he have a good social
I
standing?
don't
Or
know
you're not
that.
sure.
Oh no, she said that, well, because she was actually questioned, like, was this revenge because she's described, because she's very fashionable. She's put together, people say bourgeoisie or whatever. She's like, I just like to look good when I go out. And that was another reason I resonated with
Yeah.
her. I'm like, yeah, Gisele, me too. You're going out in the world. Like, I like to look good at home.
That's the again going back to the stigma piece of
Yeah.
and
Like, why is
shaming
she
aspect
being
of like,
blamed?
yeah, well, you shouldn't have worn that skirt. What?
Well, she's saying like maybe they were saying like maybe her husband resented her because like
Or
she
but
was
that makes it about
happy, basically.
right, but that makes it about her too. Like maybe he was just a little twisted,
There's no reason to rape
a
anyone.
lot
Bottom
twisted.
line, what did she
Right.
say? Rape is rape.
Right. And I doubt that she's the thing that made him do this for any
For
reason.
a decade.
Yeah, he probably would have done this to somebody at some point, regardless of who they were.
He's a fuck.
He's a, yeah. Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. So she's kind of what's it called? Like I don't know, a figurehead of how to,
I think she's inspiring a lot of people,
yeah,
and that's what she wants, but she doesn't want to be considered brave, but she does want to be an example for other women that they can come forward and that they
gotcha.
don't need to feel shame, that it's the rapist that should feel shame.
Has there been any policy change that you're aware of?
I don't know. I haven't dug that deep. I mean, the
Fairly
conviction
new.
was just last
Right.
month, so who knows?
Okay.
But
Okay.
Giselle Pelicot, I don't know you, but I love you.
That's nice. I won't. I usually don't say the L word to people I don't know, but I
I do
I
love her.
appreciate what
I've
you
watched
stand
enough
for.
of her
I
interviews and statements where I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
I love you.
that's nice.
I love your hair. I love how
I
you talk.
when you said that, I instantly thought back of when a former coworker identified your clothing and said you were my spirit animal, and I think about that when I see fancy but like tasteful, somewhat maybe like vintage clothing. By the way,
Yeah,
stuff I couldn't pull
I
off.
was actually blown away that they brought her fashion sensibilities and how she's put together when she goes out into this,
Mhm.
and it made her defend that. I was like, what? You're really reaching out, people.
Well, and that's one of the, yeah, that's one of the first things that if someone comes forward that they're made to do. I have worked with folks in the past who that's one of the most traumatizing things is being made to tell everything in front of a bunch of people that are tearing it apart.
Yeah, but she felt confident and she should have been because she's right.
Mhm. Well, in her case was so big, it's probably why it got so much
International.
publicity.
Yeah.
You could imagine maybe like smaller accounts that have, significant impact that don't get looked at. So it'd be hard.
Yeah. I just really respect her and think she's badass. So,
Well, thank you for badassery. And
what do you got?
I'm going to talk a little bit about,
I like that 60s font, by the way.
do you? I like it too.
Yes.
This
I feel like I
Einstein.
have books at home that have that font from the 60s, that same.
Yeah, this book is so I brought a book with me if you can't see
I
it.
love books.
The Life and Time of Albert Einstein. And it's a book I got a while back. It's pretty hefty, thick, but it's written by, let me make sure. This is by Clark. There we go. Um, Ronald W. Clark. And this book goes through the life and times of Albert Einstein. And I had started reading it a while back and finished reading There are parts I skimmed in the middle, I won't lie.
He's such a genius.
So what I really loved is how little I knew and understood about Albert Einstein and how much he's like revered, right? Like you hear
Yeah.
Einstein, people know the name,
Well, he
and
thought
there's
of
some big
stuff that is
assumptions.
still like people are to this day like, how did he
Correct.
even think of that?
Correct. There's still things that while I was reading this, I had to just like stop, think about, look up, and still had no idea what what it
Yeah,
meant.
clear genius.
And going back to like some of the so this isn't a traditional deeply disturbing like, oh, there's like a hidden murder about Albert Einstein. No, there's not that. But this is kind of just to rip that band-aid. But had more to do with our kind of underlying theme of trust no one, question everything.
Yes, trust no
So
one, question
he
everything.
is a huge advocate of that, which I didn't really know that's where his foundations kind of came from.
He was alternative.
Very, very much so. And
He was antisocial,
he was a
alternative.
contradiction. He was the German who hated Germany and he renounced Germany, moved became a Swiss citizen, then wanted to like help make policy change, move back, and then Hitler came into power, then left Germany again, and regretted that action. So there was a lot of contradictions. uh, he was Jewish, and believed in order within the universe, but then also talked about kind of laissez-faire, like flexibility. There's just all these
Yeah.
contradictions.
But if it wasn't for the anti-Semitism that
Mm.
made him not be able to like pursue his original path and made him like work in that post office or whatever, he wouldn't have
Right.
had all that downtime to think about how the universe worked. So it
Well,
kind of like, oh, it's all meant to be in a way.
so and what I found the most interesting, there's a reason why like most of these pages in here are kind of dog-eared at the front end. It's kind of about his like childhood and what I think people don't understand about him is that he really like wasn't a genius for his own like per his own statements. Like he grew up and he he was really secluded from a lot of interactions with people for a long time. He didn't even have this same verbal speech. He didn't start fluently talking, German being his native language, until he was 9 years old.
That's why I believe he was able to come up with this. I think he spent a lot of time in his head.
So, well, what he said was that he didn't have the same context and social interactions when he was younger. So he actually kind of he kind of flipped that idea. Similar though, that once he was able to think in those ways, it actually came when he was a middle adult, was when he started thinking about space and time. When most kids do that when they're young, when their imagination is more at play and they use imagination and play with big ideas and concepts. So he said that didn't come for him until he was an adult and he was able to, and as an adult, think about big concepts that most people have already kind of thrown away.
I Another person I love that I've never met,
Right.
and
No,
I never will now.
I'm glad you like stipulated that. I was gonna end with he dies. No,
Thank you. Spoiler alert.
spoiler.
He
Sorry.
dies in the end.
By the way, your hero. No, actually, while reading this, it did hit home with a lot of what I think our podcast has really um promoted. So I like your kind of ending of hope topic. They
Yeah.
it similarly he highlights. I think the disturbing part is how little people know and what people run with.
No, I think everybody's vision or image or perception of Einstein is like
It's that one
that
picture.
poster
Yeah, it's the
where he has like
poster.
his tongue out and like
Which
his hair's all
he
crazy.
had a good sense of humor. He was very like slapstick comedy kind of
But
guy.
there's so much more.
Right, right. And he had that sense of humor like as a person outside of the scientific side, but I think even that picture confuses people.
Yeah.
They don't like what does that mean to them? But that's what they
They
think it
just
means.
interpret it. Yeah.
Yeah. You see it and it means what? Oh, he's a genius. Why? I don't know. Um, so
Well, it's kind of that like classic, like college professor kind of eccentric. Like, I think that's what I
like the
always thought.
image, right?
Yeah, like, oh, you don't care about what your hair looks like, and you have your tweed blazer, and you're just like, whatever, because I'm so smart, I don't need to care. That's like kind of all how I interpreted that poster. Did you ever have that poster?
I actually do. It's up in the garage.
See, everybody has that
It's
fucking
taped
poster.
it's taped onto a giant cutout of Elvis's body. It's like a stand-up cardboard Elvis and Einstein's face is on him.
I never had the poster, but I've seen it very frequently in my
Right,
life.
right. You can easily picture it. And if you haven't, just Google Einstein. I guarantee it's one of the pictures.
I know, isn't that crazy how that happens?
So,
Your legacy is just kind of created for you in
right.
some ways.
And I'm cutting ahead because it relates, but it doesn't really matter. He talked about in like talking with his son and other interviews, he talked about his bad memory of his childhood because there's a lot of things in his biographies that really it just pertains to middle adulthood and adulthood. And his childhood doesn't have as much there, obviously, with what you write about. And when he's asked to like recall things, he's noted as having a really bad memory. And he said um, that when you talk about yourself from the past, or like, sorry, talk about yourself from the present about the past,
Mm.
he says that it's with advantages, but with hindsight of history to guide him, he then identified himself as every reminiscence is colored by today's being what it is, and
Yes,
therefore by a deceptive point of view.
that's absolutely true. I love that. I totally
Right.
agree.
So today changes how you view tomorrow, or sorry, yesterday.
Yeah,
And
I mean, you're always trying to kind of color your narrative.
right, right. It just it suggests caution, take it with a grain of salt, all of that. And
Oh
that was his own
gosh, totally.
admission of his, you know, it could be faulty. And he said the marvelous memory of Einstein for scientific matters. His son said that it's amazing how much he could remember about scientific theory and things he cared about, which made me think about like folks who have like ADHD. Like the things you care about, you will never forget. You can really just like lose yourself in it.
Yeah.
But then to recall something, you know,
Or to have to do something mundane to you.
right, right.
No chance.
Where are my car keys? It can just be gone. He said that, so the son said that scientific matters does not extend to other fields. He didn't believe that Einstein could forget anything that interested him scientifically, like matters related to childhood. But he said he rarely talks about them too, like they rarely talked about them. His development is in a very specific category. So he said that if it's something that wasn't that category, he would just say he didn't remember it well enough. And he said, quote, "You're quite right about my bad memory for personal things. It's really quite astounding. Something for psychoanalysts, if there really are such people." I love that quote.
Well, I remember us kind of getting down on ourselves because we felt like our memories were bad.
Right.
But then I heard Neil Tyson deGrasse, who we would all agree is very intelligent. Just recently, I probably heard him say this like within the last few months. And so he had a guest on his podcast, was like kind of like getting on himself, like that he couldn't remember something that he should have
Right.
known. And Neil Tyson Gracie said, "You know a lot of things. You can be forgiven for not being able to remember one of them." And
Right.
after that, it totally changed my own, like how I treat myself when I can't remember anything. Like, I don't have the recall cue. I know a lot of shit.
Right.
You expect me to be able to just
Right.
come up with
Out of
something?
thin air. Right.
Yeah.
I'm really good. Like I'm like, oh, that. Okay. And then my brain will come up with I'm really
Like
good.
jog the memory
That's why I
and I
think I
can come
like
up with that.
that's why I think I like counseling so much because there are, as the person's talking, you get constant cues that you can then bring in information. But I'm not like if you put me in your room and said, remember the details about this topic, but then give me nothing else,
Yeah.
I probably will look really bad.
No, because we know a lot of things.
I need the cue. I need a reminder. I need the
Yes.
context.
If
That's a pass.
Neil
That's a pass.
deGrasse Tyson says it's fine, then it's fine.
It's fine. So, and Einstein says so too. So
Yes.
that's good.
So very
So,
brilliant minds tell us it's okay to not be able to remember stuff. It's actually a sign of intelligence. So
right, right.
whatevs.
And this is where I also think that so people say Einstein's a genius, and then the counter thing I think that has come up a lot is that oh, but he wasn't intelligent growing up because I think that's something that's been talked about. Like he like
But who was there and like systemically, come
right.
on.
Well, and he actually like did have really good grades, but how he would take in information. I mean, his one of his teachers did. His dad asked him like, what should he be preparing for career wise, and it was like it doesn't really matter. He will be good at
He was
nothing,
probably bored to tears.
right?
And that's why he like doesn't give it enough.
And he didn't. Yeah, he was very again like 9 years old was when he started talking fluently, and a lot of folks have, I think, assumed basically that there's like maybe dyslexia as part of his language. I would say language differences, but then other folks said maybe he's on the autism spectrum, but he's also like fine socially in other situations.
Yeah.
So it didn't really fit. So,
I
but
just
again,
think he was so intelligent, he didn't care.
I think people wanted to
It was so
put him in a
boring.
box or a
Yeah.
category, but he didn't really fit.
Yeah.
So about
Why are
the
people always trying to box us in? I hate it.
right.
Let's tear down the wall of those boxes.
Well, and so that memory
Mr.
part,
Gorbachev, tear down the wall. That's not an exact
I
quote,
mean, that
but
already
close.
happened, but
I know, but I'm trying to like give
bring
a
it
quote
in.
because it's
Past.
relevant.
It is. So the past, basically, if you view it more as an like remembering something is more of an act of faith than to be viewed as reliable evidence. Situation is truer to a lesser extent. Like if you, the closer the thing is to you, probably or the more accurate it's going to be.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a thick jungle of distortions, misconceptions, inventions, and simple lies. And that's how they view how people talk about Einstein's past. There's literally a biography written about him with a like the front picture being a drawing showing Einstein and it's labeled Einstein at the first test of the atomic bomb. This is a
Yeah.
test that he never even knew about. He was not involved in whatsoever. And that is, they said this is actually an illustration rather than an exception. So his imagery has been put and placed in quotes in front of so many things that he actually was never involved in and not a part of as a way to try to clout
And
something.
he's dead, so he can't defend his honor.
Right. Well, and it's kind of like it's like an opposite defense too. I don't know how to say that. Like there's someone using your fame or infamy, I guess, to bolster their own
Yeah, I think
whatever.
that happens today still,
Oh, 100%.
all the time.
Yeah, like does even having a picture of Einstein in your office, are you trying to say something about yourself?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm cool. I'm done with Einstein.
Yeah, Einstein's brilliant.
And so am
Therefore,
I.
so am I. We're friends.
We're the same. Samesies.
Same Z's. We're both funny about it.
And why do we call him Einstein and not
Sorry.
Albert?
Albert. Right, right. Everyone goes by last name. Yeah, Albert.
Like, did people back in the day just say, hey, Einstein? Or did they call him
But it's
Mr.
Einstein.
Einstein or Dr. Einstein or Albert? What did they
I
call
mean,
him?
historically, what I've seen is first name and then doctor was used a lot, like doctor.
Yeah, so why are we just being so casual and like throwing out the formalities and just being like, hey, Einstein, like we're his BFF,
Hmm.
like we're part of his crew.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So nothing really in Einstein's early history like suggested like I'm a dormant genius sort of thing for what people would expect that to be, I guess.
A dormant genius. What?
The that's the verbiage from the book.
It's
In
all
all
like a
fairness,
little seed pod just
yeah.
waiting.
Well, what I found fascinating about this book is like it really is trying to like find like where and why.
It's really trying to logic it out.
Yeah, like how did we create this genius?
Did we?
No, but that came up so much like when I was reading, so when it goes into like his creation of the theory of relativity, it like breaks down every theorist at the time and like their contribution.
That's a real thick book, to be honest.
Right, it is. It goes through like their contribution and whether or not Einstein should have like should have given credit for all or some or part of whatever. And really, to me, it sounds like a bunch of jaded and a little bit bitter scientists that felt a little angry that someone could come in so young and at the time and
Get over it, peeps.
question everything, really. So
Question everything.
question everything. So you're gonna like
Mhm.
this. I have to backtrack again here. So I
Oh
liked.
God, is my computer trying to restart? Hold on.
Okay, yeah, you better fix that. So eh, got it. Cool. So for the okay, good.
I think
Make sure you're still recording.
it should.
Okay. So his life was really, I mean, dramatic, honestly, at the time because of what history was happening around him at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there were three kind of shattering developments of the 20th century that were all right around that time.
Shattering?
Again, that was a good verbiage in the book. So the rise of modern Germany, the birth of
Okay.
nuclear weapons, and the growth of Zionism. So there
Mm.
was like these three big occurrences happening around his as he was developing as a child and becoming a young adult. They really drove his so he avidly had a distaste for politics and world affairs in general, but because it was such a thing, he couldn't avoid it, basically, whether he liked it or not. So
Right.
he had such an it was he was so impacted by it, although he wanted nothing to do with it,
Hmm.
which I think had impacted how all of that kind of played out in his life. So he was Jewish by origin, if you didn't get that from earlier. Um, but
Kind
he,
of obvious in the name.
yeah, I mean,
The Stein is a giveaway. And
I,
I'm Jewish and I can say that.
I wonder how many, I mean, you're accurate. I wonder how many people would even nowadays, like if you ask someone who's
I don't know if every Stein is, but
knows
it gives me pause usually. I'm like, oh, are they a Jew?
right, but you may know that context more
And then I
than
have to
most.
listen to Adam Sandler's song, and I'm like, oh, they're not in the song, so I guess not.
I love that. I saw Adam Sandler this last year. Great. Um, so he even said that he renounced his country when Hitler came into power. Uh, he offended more than once people by his insistence that the Jewish people were people and human species, and that at the time was a controversial point.
Hmm.
To the, I mean, literally to the point where he had to leave Germany. So that was something that was very hard because also at the time was this authoritarian approach to really everything. And he very much took on a view of pacifism, which was also pretty controversial at the time. To be passive was to be weak. And he didn't view it as being weak. He viewed it as actually probably the concept of like inaction is action.
Yeah. What do you feel about that?
And
Passivism and inaction.
I mean, I agree. I think that the choice to the choice to leave, for example, even if not understood at the time, could have a big impact. So him leaving Germany at the time says a lot about
That's
him.
not inaction, though. That's an
Well,
action.
but exactly. Well, then how would you define inaction? It's more perspective based.
See, that's why I don't think passivism is real.
Okay, yeah, and I was
That's
gonna
probably
say,
controversial, but
I
I
agree.
feel to remain silent is agreement.
To
Like if you see something happen and you don't do anything, I feel like you're letting it happen in
well,
a way.
and I don't think maybe, and I wouldn't maybe even call that pacifism
I think
to say
people would. Do you remember Moby?
no.
He's a super popular music artist in like probably mid
Oh,
90s.
okay. The
He
name
did
is
a
familiar.
song, I think, with Gwen Stefani, The South Side. They like did a collab.
I have to
It was
look it
real
up.
popular. But I remember he was famously in the news for there was like a whole bar fight in the UK, and he's like, I'm a pacifist, so I didn't do anything.
Mhm.
I'm like, and then I remember thinking at the time, like, what does that mean? You just like let yourself get punched in the face? Like, I feel like inaction is action in my mind. Like you are taking a stand. Even doing nothing is taking a stand. I
Mhm.
think. I think it's still action.
Right. Well, and I don't, I think the idea of pacifism gets the idea of like not doing. But pacifism could be, like you said, it's an intentional act of contrary, basically. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
feel like it's still not doing any. It's still an action. Choosing to not act is still an action, I guess, is what I'm saying, maybe. I'm not sure. But I remember Moby is the one that made me first start thinking about pacifism and how I felt about it. And I remember I felt annoyed.
Well, and it said in here too, and I just honestly don't know the context too, but it said that like with his religious background too, that directly kind of contradicted his pacifist views too. I don't know as much there, but I don't know if that has impact. Um, but he, like, for example, his family wasn't even they weren't like strictly like following like all the hardline rules of like Jewish tradition. Like they weren't like far over here to the right. They
Let's not
ate
say right.
ham. Is that a bad
I
indicator?
think
Why does it
nowadays it
mention on your
is.
right hand over here?
I feel like right and
Mm,
left mean things nowadays.
kind of like pink and blue.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's fair. So on this hand,
On one hand.
on one hand, and the other hand, both of equal merit. Um, right. So they don't they didn't practice as many traditional aspects of the religion
Mhm.
as some, and that was at the time viewed negatively by some of the religious sector, I guess. But they had no problems with that and found like he found that to be a like he believed in God, but he was not actively maybe
Religious.
to the level,
Yeah.
yeah. And people have found that how can you maybe believe in God and have all these scientific views? Sometimes that was a
I
contradiction.
think that's still true.
And I mean, he included a belief in the order and orderly nature of the universe, and he said that that he suggested that there had to be something creating this energy within the universe. So that was his kind of alluding that there is something there greater.
Hmm.
So this was a he was a pacifist who encouraged men to go take arms. Again, that contradiction
Yeah.
that you could be something and also something else, the dualistic nature. People.
Yeah. So we are all both. We are both
We are
and.
all both and also without. We have plenty and not enough.
100%, and also
99% of the
0%.
99% of the time, all the time.
Yes.
Oh, okay, let me skip ahead here. So he's already this really complex individual as a child growing up in this um
Yeah.
not being where his school and his family thinks he should be, like intellectually. They thought he was a little, behind, quote.
Right.
But he was, again, like you said, he was thinking the entire time, and just this social aspect kept him kind of withheld from people.
Yeah.
So he asked himself, he said, I sometimes ask myself, how did it come that I was the one to develop the theory of relativity? The reason I think is that a normal adult never stops to think about problems of space and time. These are things which he has thought of as a child. Um, and he says, quote, but my intellectual development was, and I'm just going to say retarded in the sense of the time of how he spoke about his
Yes.
mental health.
We don't use the R word now.
No, as a result of which I began to wonder about space and time only when I had already grown up. Naturally, I could go deeper into a problem than a child with normal capabilities.
Yeah, because he's in his head.
Hmm.
I think, I mean, I'll say that, but yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he basically is also, if you read between the lines of what he isn't saying, is he was withheld from a lot of opportunity because of his developmental age at the time, I guess. So that hindered his ability to think about things bigger.
Hmm.
And then he went to this place called well, he went to a Catholic elementary school and he went to the Luitpold Gymnasium. He received what he appeared to have been the first genuine shock to his intellectual system. So this is where he really developed an anti-authority.
It got real.
She got real because again, this is in Germany. So Germany during um, a very authoritarian time, there was not really reason for his parents to think that this was at least outside of the norm for what was being done across the board, but it was actually probably worse than what they had thought. Um, so he, woo,
Excuse me.
excuse you, if you want. He,
We
he,
say Gesundheit in my family.
Gesundheit. Yeah, I, ever since I went to a Christian grad school, I stopped saying bless you
Bless you.
because I stopped understanding why that was done. And I like because part of my soul leaked out. I don't get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, is it? Is our soul snot? Is that what that's
Did
saying?
you save my life just now? I don't get it. So thanks.
Thank
And
you.
it's kind of like if someone's crying, do you like
Do you offer a tissue or no?
yeah, like if I'm
Yeah,
sorry
I'm still not sure.
my body did a thing.
Yeah, I'm still not sure.
I mean, there's so much shame. That could be a whole topic, farting,
The
sneezing,
whole, you did
like
farting.
oh, yeah, well, I did kissing too. That was another
Yeah,
bodily
you
thing.
did
That's
farting and
gross.
kissing.
Yeah. So many weird things
We've
about
done so
body.
many
I know.
topics.
Memory. So anyways, he said that okay, so then basically that this going to this school is what started the incident of the pocket compass. Have you heard of that?
No,
Okay, so I hadn't either. They talk about it in this book that like it's a well-known thing,
maybe it
and
was back in the day.
maybe in Germany or maybe back in the day.
Yeah, back when that font was
I
like
hadn't
new,
heard
it
of
was
it,
probably
right?
super cool.
So it was interesting though. It was his a famous incident of the pocket compass while he confirmed that it actually happened. So Einstein did say this was real. So there's probably some lore around it. He also put some um like emphasis on how it impacted him. He said the story is simply that when the boy was 5, ill in bed, so the boy being Einstein, his father showed him a pocket compass. We don't have those nowadays. Maybe
Is it
that's
just a
why.
compass
Like it's yeah, but
that you'd
maybe
like
one that
just
you pop
carry
open,
around?
that you pop open.
Yeah, I have 100 of those at my
Okay.
house.
So not everybody does, just so you know.
But we don't carry them around in our pocket anymore, so we just call them a compass now.
So you don't have to say pocket compass because we
Yes.
don't have not pocket compasses.
Yes,
Got it. Okay. We
exactly.
don't have ship compasses around.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
just
got it.
there's compasses.
It's a compass. So, what impressed the child was that since the iron needle always pointed in the same direction, whichever way the case was turned, it must be acted upon by something that existed in space, the space that has always been considered at that time empty.
Mm.
The incident, which is again famously known to everybody, not me, was said to have really impacted how he viewed matter in the universe, that something had to exist.
There's
It wasn't empty
something that was
void.
acting on it.
Correct.
Yeah.
That you couldn't see. So Einstein himself, answering questions in 1953 at the time of his 74th birthday, gave us even more perspective by him saying how it affected him. Did the compass and how the book, the Euclidean geometry, which he read a few years later, impact his like theory on relativity and development? He said, with some caution, they've noted, but a man has little insight into what goes on within him. When a young puppy sees a compass for the first time, it may have no similar influence, nor on many a child. What does, in fact, determine the particular reaction of an individual? One can postulate more or less plausible theories on the subject, but one never really finds the answer.
Hmm.
So, like to share a story about how something impacts you, and they're like, oh, well, did this then create where you came, like
And
where you come
asking
to
him at
be?
that advanced age past the original,
And it
like,
goes back to the memory thing of like, I
yeah,
mean, how can I say that it didn't? But either you could make a million theories on why
right,
at that point.
exactly. You
But
can definitely create your own narrative at that point
everyone wants an answer. They want like the reason
because they want to know why he thought the way he was. Like, everybody's
because
fascinated with his brain.
because they want they what's interesting is I think people would say that like that's something to achieve, be like Einstein.
Totally.
But Einstein like really didn't have like that stellar of a childhood, and wasn't that stellar of a like
Yeah.
what about that is so ideal? And it's well, you know what others don't, maybe.
Well, have out of the box experiences. Maybe that's a start.
So he also learned how to like play violin and some of the like sweeping generalizations. He was a great violinist. Like he had to kind of reminds me of how I talk about me as a musician is I play a lot of instruments not well, and it takes me a lot to learn them. So he really enjoyed playing it, but
Hmm.
he had to like be really like pushed to do it, and it wasn't easy for him. So
Yeah.
I don't think people are pulling up Einstein's musical classical and playing it. Like that's not what people know him
No, it's
for.
probably just something.
But he's not like a genius and just happens to be amazing at everything.
No, and who is?
Most aren't, correct. So this the gymnasium place, he said it was his first like separation from authority in general. And he said the teachers in the elementary school appeared to me like sergeants, and in the gymnasium, the teachers were like lieutenants.
I love that.
More than 40 years later, speaking to the 72nd convocation of the State University of New York, he noted that to him, the worst thing to seem to be for school, principally, is to work with the methods of fear, force, and artificial authority. Such treatment destroys the healthy feelings, the integrity, and self confidence of the pupils. All that it produces is servile hilliard.
I love that.
And years later, replying to a young girl who wrote and had sent him a manuscript, he wrote, "Keep your manuscript for your sons and your daughters, in order that they may derive consolation from it and not give a damn for what their teachers tell them or think of them." That whole like, I need somebody to validate my worth. And he says, that's fine. Let it be the people that care about you, not these fake authority figures.
Right. Whose opinion do we care about?
So he said that this experience taught him to question and to doubt.
Ooh,
Always valuable qualities in a scientist,
I'm a
and
fucking scientist.
particularly so at that period in history for him and physics and all of that. But I would say for anybody, um, it created there were at the time this barrier to discussion. There was a barrier to discussing anything controversial. And this idea of doubting and questioning, I think, still exists today. Like,
Oh, 100%. Yes. There's still thoughts about conformity being the
and
norm.
on both, and I say both sides, meaning like I think politics get dragged into everything.
Well, this is across the board, every
Mm-hmm.
area of life, I think. There's always that.
There's
What is
a
the balance?
and trying to like pin people against, you have to have something to push against to be for something. So all of these um between politics and advertising and pharmaceutical company, all these vested interests, uh, they try to pin people against something so they can move forward towards something else.
Hmm. You have to create that emotional energy in some way.
And so Einstein says, question everything and doubt things, which I think
Yes.
doubt is viewed negatively
Have
by
an
most people.
inquisitive mind.
Mm-hmm. question. So he
Have it be a discerning
discerning
connoisseur of
eye.
information.
I dog-eared this. Oh, one second, I have to cough. Sorry. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Talking too much. Einstein and religion got brought up quite a bit because people talk about that stuff. I guess. So I just liked his frame of reference here. So he said that the God that Einstein's God was not the God of most men. He wrote of religion mostly middle life and later, and where most people start talking about religion when they're younger, like they get told by parents, and that's where they start to adopt those ideals. He actually was later in life, and he wrote about it from the belief of Alice's Red Queen from the
Mm.
Looking Glass and said, words mean what you want them to mean and to clothe with different names what to more ordinary mortals and to most Jews look like a variant of simple agnosticism. So, to some, when they looked at his life, he felt that they viewed him as agnostic by not looking a certain way, but how what meaning and purpose he took from the actions and things he did were powerful to
Right.
him.
He just didn't practice in community.
Mhm. And he said, or sorry, this was Rabbi Goldstein in New York said that he believed,
Which Rabbi Goldstein? There's probably a fucking thousand of them.
is it? It was in 1929, so
Yeah.
I don't know, you can time date that back. In he said that he believed in Spinoza's God. I don't know who Spinoza is, honestly. I'll admit that right now.
Why are you looking at me like I should
I
know?
don't know. I don't know. He said that
I do know we have a Rabbi Goldstein in Spokane right now,
is there?
and it's not the one probably referenced on those pages.
Probably not. He said that he believed in a God who reveals himself in the harmony of all that exists, not in the God who concerns himself with the fate and actions of men. So tying that back in with Einstein's view that more of the interaction of something is a force connecting all things behind. So everything's connected.
Everything is.
Everything's connected. Okay, so things get complicated when we start going into his sciences because I'm not Einstein. I've not spent years learning that. So if I were to say, oh, and first of all, his papers and stuff started with learning about magnetism. I hadn't really known that, and you had the topic about magnets,
Hmm.
which I thought was pretty interesting, and that's kind of what pushed his initial interest with that route.
Because they're fascinating.
It is really fascinating. And it was something that was kind of known at the time, but there's a lot of what wasn't known. And people wanted, like, how did you get, how did you come up with that theory of relativity? And like most things, but what people don't assume, I guess, is that it was by trying to figure out something else and you ruling out like where the gaps are that you then find something to explain why something else exists. So
Yeah.
he didn't just like come upon it or wasn't looking for it and found it. He was looking for something else and to fill in that gap, and then
That's the
it was
awesomeness of
found.
science.
Right. So I had to, it then goes into breaking down like how he got there and then what other influencers were there. But one of the biggies with this is his ultimate theory it didn't like disprove Newton's law of gravity, but it filled in all the gaps around it and challenged Newton's gravity because it talks about space and time. So then we come to our space and time topic about time travel.
Do you
And now
remember
I'm
we interviewed that super hot
that
actual scientist?
scientist who had no idea who we were
Yeah.
and was not
God
prepared.
bless him.
I want to watch that episode again because we had it on video and it was great.
And we were both like on our super best behavior
It was so
because we
good.
are like, this is actually a real scientist and we are stupid. We don't want to appear that
You
way.
watch it click in midway through when he realized he could relax a little bit by the level of our questions.
And I think he enjoyed himself in the end.
Too, I think he would totally come back, by the way, for maybe a follow-up in the future at some random point. Um, just for our own pleasure, maybe. So yeah,
And his name was Fabio.
Fabio, yeah.
Realsies.
And I legit read his paper.
I did too
I did
because I
too.
wanted to feel
His
super
journal.
prepared. I came up with questions ahead of time.
Well, one of the things that made me like make the correlation between us reading this, aside just like the concept of space and time, was Einstein specifically said, let me try to remember the verbiage. He said that I believe that scientific evidence that comes out that is kind of postulated in like real here and now things will get more credit and will last longer in time than things that are
Mm,
done in like experimental, like I did an experiment and here's how it proves this
right.
versus here's something that can have context with the
Well,
real
people can
world.
relate to.
Right.
I agree with that
Right.
100%.
And Fabio's paper was an experiment that he
Yeah.
did that showed this thing that is honestly revolutionary. And yet
We
I
can,
don't have my time machine yet. So I don't understand.
yeah, I haven't tried it.
Right. I
I
think,
don't know if there's a closed loop or an open loop.
right. I don't think people have followed up as they should with this like scientific breakthrough, but
I'm
probably.
fine with going to Australia and connecting with him and like
Right,
we can
right.
follow up.
Yeah,
Let's
because
do it.
I feel like it needs more credit socially. I'm sure within the community, it does
Right.
have a lot of
But he was probably just a
credence.
blip on anything mainstream.
Correct. And I think Einstein totally has it right that that is because it's not going to hit the test of time because socially people aren't accepting or
Or
won't.
care or
Yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't relate to them.
Right.
So
It's whatever the news decides to hand feed people. That's what they care about or think is important or even exists.
Einstein was like literally harassed endlessly to come up with a like they basically were like, great, good job on this theory that like scientifically everybody's like, wow. Now can you, and they newspapers specifically, can you give us a
Yeah, like
something that makes
what are you
sense?
talking about,
Yeah,
guy?
like make that make sense for
Yeah.
us.
Can we have an analogy?
Yeah, can you dumb it down basically? And
Can I have a stick people drawing that shows what you're talking about? Einstein?
right. And that's what people wanted. And I mean, he resisted that for a
Good.
really long time.
Yeah, I mean, I see good and bad. I see
Yeah.
good, like, why should you? And also bad, like, do you want people to know about and understand? Like, I think that's the question.
So his dislike of publicity was very real. At the time, it gave the impression of a of this book reference, Lawrence of Arabia backing into the limelight. But once the I don't even know what a cordon is. What is a cordon?
A cordon?
Yes, once the cordon broke, I don't even understand that at
I
all.
don't know, a barrier of some
Einstein,
kind?
so like he was willing enough to talk, but he didn't like it.
Hmm.
He refused permission to sketch him when he returned, like to
Sketch him like
Berlin.
a caricature on the
Right,
beach.
right, exactly. And but he sat there at a restaurant and while someone was sketching him. So like he wouldn't give permission for things, but he also wouldn't necessarily adamantly stop it from happening. Maybe some of that
Yeah.
pacifism
If somebody was
aspect.
like sketching me,
Hmm.
I mean, that was in the old days, that was the equivalent of someone just like,
Taking your photo.
or
Yeah.
videoing you, like doing
Mhm.
a TikTok of you without your permission. That was the equivalent.
Right, right. Um,
He
he
probably didn't have a posse,
he would have like hundreds of visitors who wanted like him to like talk to them. He received the keys of New York at a ceremony attended by.
which don't fit in any lock, BT dubs.
Oh, that's good to know. So he had a statue, yeah, along the Riverside Church overlooking the Hudson River, the only statue of a living man among the thinkers who had changed the
The
world from the
thinkers.
days of Socrates and Plato.
That's a
He
road down reference for those of you that know, you know.
he celebrated the Jewish festival of Hanukkah at a crowded meeting in Madison Square Garden.
The Festival of Light.
Mhm. He gave his famous 2% speech there, which was a pacifist speech to the New York History Society at the Ritz-Carlton
Wait,
Hotel.
what's this 2% speech?
Yeah, it says that he was,
Who are the 2%? Is it like the 1%?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up more. I haven't,
Like, did the percent decrease? And now we're
I
down to
don't know.
1%?
Yeah, I'm curious because this was, yeah, I mean, this is a ways back. He visited the New York Times and he visited the Metropolitan Opera. He spontaneously cheered when the audience noticed him sitting quietly in a box, handed a slip of paper in which the Metropolitan Publicity Director had written, Relativity. There is no hitching post in the universe, so far as we know. Einstein studied it carefully, added, read, and found correct, and signed it. And
Someone's trying to be funny.
right. And
He got the joke,
yeah, he got
to his
a
credit.
nerdy joke.
Because
And
I probably would have been like, crumple, throw it in the corner.
he was followed by press and
He's
publicity.
participating. Good for him.
He nimbly about face escaped them. A Marx Brother incident
Oh, the Marx Brothers. Wait.
in which the publicity director had seen running after the world's most famous scientist, plaintively calling Mr. Einstein, Mr. Einstein. So like
Oh, they made
chase
the
him
Marx
down.
Brothers run
Yeah.
after him.
So yeah, so the dislike of publicity was like
That's like a
real.
Billy on the street
He
of the old days.
the Elden days. He continued to evade people, but he said that if the autograph is wanted very badly, if the letter brings, say, $3 for the Berlin poor, um, the doctor will be happy. And with pictures for autograph with, say, $5, the doctor will be happy.
That was probably like $100.
Right. Um, the little account book, which his wife had shown at the time, containing the details of what Einstein sent to Berlin's poor, was, she claimed, his favorite reading.
Okay.
So he liked to put that money back into the people. Um, so moving along, moving along. Um, with the publicity aspects of Einstein's relativity theory, I feel like he still is not. There's lots of cool pictures in here too if you want to see them, but I still don't think it's like publicly well known what the relativity theory is. And when I looked it up, it literally, I said, "What is the theory of relativity?" in Google search, and then it was like, it's the theory of how
Of
things are like
relativity.
relative things are. It was
They're like,
so
it's the
general.
theory of how things are like relative.
Yeah, I know. I was like, part of my language, but no shit. Tell me what I don't understand about that.
Right.
And then you have to like dive into like because there's actually two parts of a paper, like two papers that combine to then make this theory. And it's about the curvature of space and time and how like people who are in well, one is how everyone's going to view um
He actually is
have the same
kind of hot
perspective.
in that photo.
You mean the 70 something year old Einstein?
Yeah,
Like
I
distinguished?
would consider. I mean,
If
now I
he
take it
talked on the
back
podcast.
because why is only one of his colors out? Like that makes me question hygiene, and I'm super about hygiene with anybody I do it with. So,
He might be comical enough that that was on purpose at the time too, though.
well, I'm also about fashion.
Hmm.
I mean, I almost broke up with
Presentable.
Paul when he showed up to our anniversary dinner wearing a shirt that had
I've heard enough comments about shoes and men with you,
a
so I get it.
pug on it, like a whole, it was
A whole shirt pug.
a whole pug
Yeah,
to our anniversary dinner to sushi.
you would have left.
It was
I'm
our
shocked.
one
I'm
year
shocked
and
you
was our
stayed.
one year, no,
I'm shocked.
I told him, I'm like, really? Like to our anniversary, and you expect there to be a number two?
Nope.
Believe you me, he gave that shirt away immediately after
Quick,
that.
quick.
Yes. I
Uh,
was horrified. Like all I could do was stare in
it's
horror for 15 minutes,
that
waiting for him to understand the error of his ways.
I mean, he did. He did.
He thought, well, he thought it was like I would find it kind of adorable because it was funny. I'm like, no,
No.
there's nothing funny about fashion.
Well, to put it in Einstein's framework here. So Einstein created a framework that applied to everybody. So the laws of science apply to everybody. Like everybody should wear that shirt.
Everybody should not wear
Yeah,
that
right,
shirt.
right. And that meant people in the scientific community had to listen to him because it applied to everybody,
Yeah.
and that was challenging for a lot of people. And so perspective of, for example, um, of light and how light travels is going to be the same no matter where you're at, which
It's always the same.
the
You can't go
curvature,
faster than the speed of light.
the
That's your
cur
limit.
curvature of space and time means that when you are in space, time's going to move slower for you than if you are, not in motion. And then if you things, it's like literally the science between why our science paper.
Isn't it the opposite?
Sorry, which part I may have
The
spoke.
faster you go, the slower you age.
Yeah, I meant like your not age, but like perception of time because time is relative.
Mm.
So it's like it goes slower than the person who's stationary. Is that right? Is
It's a
that
fabric, like the fabric of our lives,
correct?
days of our lives.
This is our level of knowledge about this. And but yeah, and this is a complete brushstroke because I had to you have to not read his stuff to understand it. And then when you're doing that, you're automatically not getting all
Yeah,
of the stuff.
yeah.
But it did
Yeah. Now I'm
challenge
like,
everything.
is it the faster you go, the
Wait,
slower your age,
look
or
it
the
up.
faster you go, the
Well, he
faster your age?
well,
That's the question I'm having right
well,
now.
that's how people are framed, like would frame something like that, but that's not the actual context.
No, it is
It's not, but
though.
it's not really about aging.
No, it is
It's
though.
about
They've done twin studies.
perspective of time and space. I
There's
know, but that's
there's two
different.
astronaut twins.
Mhm.
One they sent up and one they went
Right,
down.
right,
And then they did studies and one actually had aged. I think it's the one that went
right.
up had aged more
Hmm.
physically than the one that was left. So I think it's the faster you
The
go, the more
the
you
experience time.
age. Physically, though, it's not just a perception, it's physical. It's an actual,
Right, right,
you
right,
are going faster
right.
through the time.
Through time. Correct.
Yeah.
So,
So the
yeah,
lesson is
yeah, yeah.
slow the fuck down, everybody.
Yes. And which means that you can, in theory, have time travel.
Well, yeah, we're all traveling
And
in time right
and
now.
that was the question I think brought up in that paper from Fabio. It was like, okay, but how do you then, use that? And he phrased it like a door. Like, how do you then walk out that door to a different space and time instead of just being up there going different, like paralleling each other is what he talked about. Like they're like parallels,
We should listen to that again.
right?
I think
I want I
he
want
was
to.
saying you can't go back and change things. Like things are
Right,
always
right. You're not
gonna
going to
end up the same.
the butterfly affect it, right?
Yeah, you
Um,
can't.
and I don't remember his reasoning for that. I want to
It was a closed loop. That was his whole theory.
close loop, right?
That it stays in a closed loop.
Because when he enacted the, I'm gonna have to read it again because I remember it made sense
It did,
how
yeah.
obviously there was an
So you
experience.
can't go back and like change things and then it's a whole new future. You can't make it so
Mhm.
JFK doesn't get killed.
Right, right. But you could still go back.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Let's go
You can still
back.
go back. But would you want to go back if you didn't change anything?
I would go back just to hang out.
Right. And that's right. Like your experiences would be different in theory. I mean,
Well, yeah, if you have conscious awareness that you're going back, you would be so hyper aware of everything.
but basically his theory would then state that like there's like basically an ironing out like over time the outcomes would be the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can't change things. Like it would still end up the same.
But like end up, what does that mean to me? Is that
Like
right
if you
now,
went
this
back to
moment?
try to change something, it wouldn't change it, is what he's saying.
Because technically you're looking ahead at that point.
Yeah. So if you went back and like, I'm gonna murder Hitler, so there's no Holocaust,
Mhm.
you wouldn't be able to do that.
You wouldn't possibly be able to go back and direct
No, because
that
that's
outcome.
already happened. Because time isn't linear like we experience it.
Hmm.
It's all everything in the past is The future, the
It's
past.
already, yeah. So going back in itself is an illusion
Yes.
within itself. You're technically going back to a perspective of the past
Yeah.
and living a new
So
future.
Groundhog's Day is a lie.
Damn it.
Did we talk about that? I need to look and see.
I think it did.
Did we talk
I
about
think
Ground?
it
I
came
know
up.
we talked
We referenced
about
Donnie Darko.
we talked about Tony Darko. We talked about Back to the Future.
Right, right.
I don't think I don't know if we talked about Groundhog's Day.
I feel like it came up, but I don't.
Maybe.
I'm gonna watch
He
it.
was into it by the end, though. That's the
Yeah,
most important thing. We were having a
okay.
full-on real
Scientific
convo
discussion.
with a real fucking physicist
Physicist. Yes,
from another country, also.
correct. Who had an amazing Zoom background that we thought was real for most of the time. Now that I remember that.
It was deeper in the COVIDs.
Yes, it was.
He
We
was
were
advanced
deep
with
in
his
COVID. That's
backgrounds.
why, that's probably why he accepted, because at the time everything switched. So he thought we were,
He thought we were
reputable.
like actual people.
It was like an opportune moment for us. It was
No,
good.
I loved it.
We really could have taken off.
Bragging rights. All right.
So that's it. Basically, question everything, doubt all the time as a healthy thing, not as a sign of
Yeah,
anything bad.
that's what science is. Questioning
Healthy
things.
doubt because you don't know what you don't know. So you have to find the gaps in what you do know.
Finding things you don't know is what drives science. That's what drives the progression forward of learning new things.
And, rely on yourself to do those explorations and not always, the poster on your wall to say that you have clout.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, was that your until next time? Sorry, I
No,
cut
I
you.
don't think we can do it until next time because there is no next time.
Oh, I just
So
realized.
how do we
Well, no,
wrap
no, no,
up
no, no.
then?
It has to be still until next time because we've always said that there will never deeply disturbing things will never
Well,
end.
no, that is true.
It will never end.
Unfortunately, there's a limited supply of deeply disturbing things. Like
We've
we
never
could do
run
this
out.
till
We've
the day we
never,
died.
but we don't want to. And
Yes.
we have
So,
self-control.
but how do we sign off then?
I say until next time, we're going to hand it off to you to go find your own deeply disturbing things and question everything.
Question everything, trust no one.
It's been fun. We're still going to do the same thing, just, not for you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.